Welcome to another episode of Fresh Waves. We've got wonderful guests today. We're going to be talking about games. We're going to talk about the pandemic and its effect on games and the resurgence of board games in our society. And who better to have on the show than two people who are avid board game players. I'm not going to say they're avid gamers because when you say that, that instantly brings up connotations of computer gaming. And that's not what today's show is about. Today on Fresh Waves, we are talking board games. Not games that make you bored, but traditional board games. Games that are exciting and fun to play. And we're talking with Sarah and Dillon, who are both avid board game players. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. So, looking online, I was kind of researching some of the games, like traditional games. And the thing that inspired me to do this show was while I was hunting it out, I found an interesting statistic that board game sales have increased tenfold since the pandemic began. People are staying home, they're not going out as much, and they're playing games once again. I mean, before television got really big and people just came home and watched TV, people would play board games, and they've been around since the dawn of time. So I looked up Monopoly. Monopoly, by the way, is having enormous sales growth off the charts. Not my favorite game, I must say, but some interesting trivia about Monopoly. Monopoly was first played as the game that we know Monopoly is in 1935. The game actually originated in 1903, and it had two sets of rules, one for the renters and one for the owners. The game for the owners seemed to take over, and Parker Brothers released the game for publication in 1935. In 1991, Hasbro took over Parker Brothers, and the game is now currently licensed in more than 103 countries and printed in 37 languages.
Wow.
That is insane.
It's incredible.
Especially because it's not one of my favorite games.
No, it's a terrible game.
I love Monopoly.
Yes.
Yeah. Dylan is really good with money games. So whenever we play together, I just end up giving him my money and forfeiting in sadness by paying ridiculous rent fees.
I just find the Monopoly can go on like Risk. Risk is another classic game. Mm-hmm. I can't stand playing it because I'm interested for the first hour and a half. By hour 3, I'm just looking for any excuse to lose all my armies and go and do something else.
Same.
I'm reminded of a Seinfeld episode where Kramer and Newman are playing a game of Risk, and they don't trust each other to leave the room and leave the board. So they're taking it on the subway and stuff, and they're playing because they're too scared to leave the game alone, and that's how long it takes to play.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. My family used to play, and then it would go on a special card table over in the corner, and after a meal was eaten, it would come back out, and 2 days later, they're still playing the game.
Yeah, I've played for an entire weekend.
Oh, my God.
No.
Yeah.
I just give away my people. I say, you know what? You can have them. You seem to be gaining some control right now, so I'm just going to tap out and just graciously leave this monstrosity.
And in my family, everybody used to get mad at me because I would do exactly that. And then, you're wrecking the game. You got to stay in and you can't just give away all your armies. And why are you attacking the U.S.? And look at,
It's fine.
Whatever. So some more of the traditional games that people are playing right now. Scrabble. Mm-hmm. The Game of Life. That's a game I've never really gotten into. It's just not my kind of game.
I've played it.
Is it okay?
It's okay. It's like,
right.
It's nothing exciting. Like, there's not much strategy to it. You're kind of just going around.
I find it's more of a kid's game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, around 10 years old and stuff, I used to play that game, and I used to like it a lot. Mm-hmm. But now it's all chance. There's not really any skill involved.
Yeah.
It's the same with Sorry. Sorry is a great game when you're a kid. It's a little bit boring now.
Yeah.
But it was a favorite as a kid because unlike Risk, you could see an end.
Yeah.
An end was in sight.
Yeah. 100%.
Plus you get to mess up all your friends and then be like, sorry. It's so Canadian. I love it so much. I love that game.
It has Canadian origins, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a Canadian game. It's I actually really want it in my collection, but it's kind of hard to find. Sorry is I think it's a great game. Like, there's really nothing to it, but let me tell you how heart-wrenching it feels when you're so close to winning and then someone just comes out of home from their home and just puts you back in the starting spot. It is It's gut-wrenching. What can I say?
How stereotypically Canadian of us to invent a board game named Sorry.
I know. It's perfect.
I think
Pardon
that
me.
wasn't that part of the whole reason it was called Sorry?
Yes.
Is because
Yeah.
that's such a Canadian thing to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love that game. I've played that game at the cottage. Our cottage version, as you know, is completely destroyed. The board is in 2 pieces. We have like a little tiny bowling pin as one of the red color pieces. Like it's just like a real mess. But I have even played Sorry by myself as like the 4 different characters, and you just go around. Like I actually just love it. I think it's just like so methodical, but then like so funny. I think it's a great game.
Yep, I really like it, and the reason that game is so destroyed is because it was mine when I was young. So it's had more than 50 years of use. That
No,
game.
I love that. I love it.
It's also multi-age, and I
Yeah.
think it's really important during COVID if you have a family at home that everybody gets to play and enjoy the game
Yeah.
that you're playing. It's one thing, Snakes and Ladders is a really fun game for a 5 and 6-year-old. It's not such a fun game for a 45-year-old.
Yeah.
Or even a 15-year-old, you know what I mean? So it's fun to pick a game. Chess apparently has that. If you're a young child who can understand the game, a 10-year-old, you can have a really good time playing against even a 25-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing chess with Dad, first of all, with my dad. And I loved learning how to play chess from him. And then I played chess all through high school. I kind of put it down for a bit through university because I didn't have a chessboard, but we've been playing it again over the past year or so. I love chess. I think it's a great game.
Yeah, and speaking to playing when you're younger, I believe I was on the chess team for my school at 11 or something like that, and I played in chess club and then ended up making it on the chess team, and we toured to other schools and played tournaments and stuff, and yeah, I mean, it's a great game for kids.
Yeah.
It teaches them to think ahead as well, right?
It's very strategic, and yeah, I think that's what it's
I've
all about.
never been a super strategic person. I love strategy games, but I'm not very good at thinking ahead more than a couple steps. So when I play chess, and I often win, like I usually win against Dylan, and I often win against my dad, but I'm usually thinking only about a step or 2 max ahead. In my turn, I'm usually thinking about what can I move that is not going to get hurt by moving it, and then what can I keep that's protecting my other pieces. Like I'm really not thinking super far ahead. So I guess it's also interesting depending on the personality type, because I know Dylan thinks like so many steps ahead, and like my father thinks so many steps ahead, and I'm not like that, but I often end up winning. So it's interesting.
Yeah. But that's probably why you will never be the chess master.
No, nor a risk master,
Yeah,
nor a monopoly master. I'm not good at thinking too far ahead.
Okay. So some of the other classic games that I thought of while I was looking into this, because we are a game-playing family and we've been playing games. I mean, I think I was playing games. Well, the first game that a baby actually plays is peekaboo, isn't it? And it was really funny because I remember, Sarah, when you were little, all kids open their hands and go, boo. And Sarah would go, peek. We knew right then that there was going to be some little anomalies there.
Does our audience know that I'm your daughter?
No, they do now.
Okay, great. Because otherwise it'd be confusing to why you know how I played peekaboo as a baby.
Peek. So before we go any further, too, I'd like to tell, if you don't mind, can you tell us how old you are? Because I think that people are thinking, well, there's different games that appeal to different age groups. So you are in the over 25 and under 35 age group.
Yes.
So I think if you're getting into cards and games as a new person, things like Rummy Cube and Ramoli, those are good games. Those are really good games to hook into, just because they're simple, but they're still fun and they're ageless. You can play whether you're 6 or you can play whether you're 60, and the game still has enough strategy and challenges to be fun. Some other classic games are Dominoes. And, of course, if you're a child, Candyland.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Candyland.
Okay, so part of looking into the game world these days is knowing who you're playing with, I think, is really important.
Mm.
And during the pandemic, I think it's really important to know who you're playing with and a bit about their personality, because you don't want to start a game that is so overly competitive that it crushes someone. And you don't, on the other hand, want to start a game that's an elimination game if you've got a few hours to kill, because then some person is left out And in elimination games like Monopoly, you can be left out for hours. And it may not be what you want to do in a family situation during a pandemic. So, yes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, kind of the difference of perspective between even the two of us, because I don't know if the audience knows, but Dylan and I live separately in our own home, and we just live the two of us. So we were completely quarantining just the two of us. So we had to go to the game shelf and pick games that were completely two-player only, which we often weren't playing before. Mm-hmm. We usually always had a friend over. Our place is kind of the place to be, so we either had like our good friend Abdul over or Dylan's father over. Like we were always playing games with 3 or 4 people. So once the pandemic hit, we kind of had to take out new games and different games because we could only play 2 players. So I think it's interesting, like kind of the dynamic. Like we had, you had family-oriented games because there was still like 5 of you, whereas we only had the 2 of us. So we had to actually pick different games than normal because there was only 2 of us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of games can't play.
And we started picking up new games as a result of that and trying out things that we hadn't tried before. Mm-hmm. So that's been a positive side of that, right? But yeah, it's definitely changed our options.
I find too that a lot of games that say 2 to 4 players or 2 to 8 players, you kind of have to try them with 2 people because some of them you can play, but they really don't work very well.
See, I was going to say the opposite. A lot of games that say 2 to 8, usually the sweet spot is around 3 to 4.
Right.
So there are some games that when they say 2 to like a bigger number, usually 2 people is not going to be as fun. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I was going to say the opposite.
But like even The Haunting at Hill House, for example, is 3 to 6 players. Mm-hmm. And it's not ideal to play with 3.
No, you want to play with more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but Wingspan is 2 to 5 players, and 2 is the best.
Yeah, because your turns take so long.
Yeah. 2 or 3 I find in Wingspan is good. You get to 5 people, and it's just it's a snore fest. Mm-hmm. You're waiting so long between turns that you just want to.
Just to kind of explain what Wingspan is to everyone, it's a really cool board game that's kind of card based, and you collect birds, and the birds give you different points and have different features on them and stuff. But it's a really cool game because it's educational as well, and you get to learn about different birds, and all the cards have different fun facts.
And you have to collect certain food and eggs in order to play the birds in the first place. And it actually just came out. It came out not very long ago. That was the very last game I purchased before the pandemic started. It was the beginning of March, and I had a friend over, and he's like, you need to play this board game because he knows I love playing board games, and I have quite the collection. He's like, this is a new one, and it's really, really, really popular right now. So I want to play it with you. So he brought it over and we played it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I love this. This is such a great game. And so I was going to go the next day to 401 Games in Toronto to get it because it was sold out everywhere else. But I said, you know what? This pandemic's kind of sketchy. I'm just going to order on Amazon, even though it's a bit more expensive, and let it come, and then it's fine. It'll deliver to my door. Right when I finished ordering it, the next day I went to check again, and completely sold out. It was being resold at the middle of March. Is being resold online for like twice its worth, for like $200, $180 for the game, when originally it's only like a $75, $80 game.
I find that happens quite often with games. When I went to get a game for a Christmas present several years ago, and the week before Christmas, the game that had been $69.99 was at one of the big bookstores, and I paid $119 for it.
That was for Ticket to Ride, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
I remember that.
Yeah. So the other thing when we come to talking about the personalities of the people that you're playing with, I think something that we have to consider is whether they're a super competitive person and they're okay with that, or whether they prefer the cooperative games, because there are several games on the market that are really good strategic games that are cooperative games where you're all playing together for a common end goal.
Like Pandemic.
Yes, Pandemic is a cooperative game, and
True.
and it's having massive sales at the moment.
Which is funny because it's actually really hard to beat. Dylan and I often lose it over and over and over, and the pandemic takes over the entire world. So I don't know, it's a pretty depressing game to be playing during a pandemic. But yeah, it's a really hard game to beat, I find. If you have a lot of players, it gets easier because there's that many more turns. But when Dylan and I play it, just the two of us, we often have to play it 3 or 4 times over and over and over to actually beat it.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you were small, Sarah, I had several games that were cooperative games that everybody could play together so that we would avoid the big family squabbles and anybody left out and anybody feeling like someone was after them kind of thing. In Birds, for example, one of the cards is or Wingspan, we call it Birds, you are to steal a food from another person's tray. And let me tell you, I get pretty darn protective of my food. And when that card is in the game, I'm not a happy camper, I must say. When I've waited 3 turns to get a fish and someone steals my fish, I can get a little annoyed. And it's not a good place to be. So cooperative games are good, but then again, when you look at a person's personality, you can play many of the games on the market in a cooperative way. And Sarah, I find you're very good at doing that. Like yesterday, you gave me a fish.
Yeah, like I was going to say, Dylan and I often will not play with people if they're super like aggressively competitive. We like playing friendly, fun games, and I don't think that there's many a time in our house where it gets like really competitive and like people are like angry and like actually like mad. But I think that's because we actually, we're pretty cautious with who we play with. I have played games before. Like I've played the Settler of Catan with a couple in the past who were so competitive that it just wasn't fun. So yeah, I feel like Dylan and I really enjoy playing like friendly games of the games we're playing.
Yeah. I've been in a board game before where someone has said, either play the game the way it's to be played or don't play. Oh, all right. Then here's your fish back.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that, even though somebody loses, you don't make them feel like a loser, right? So, I mean, you don't really want somebody in the game that's just inconsiderate and just only cares about winning, right? Everybody wants to have a good time, I think, that's the goal, right? Like, as everybody enjoys themselves. It's a pastime.
And I think the reason why we play so many board games and why our collection has developed into this actually quite a big collection is because we find joy in like the experience of the actual process of playing the game together versus the outcome of what happens in the end of the game. Like, okay, you won this time. That's great. Good job. But like also, that was a really fun turn. Like, look at what happened while we were playing.
Yeah. Playing is the goal. Winning is a bonus, right?
Yeah. I went on a losing streak in Wingspan this summer where I lost 17 games in a row, and we have the score sheets to prove it.
Yeah.
17 games in a row.
Sarah didn't believe you.
It's true. I double counted for you.
You really have to enjoy the game to
lose.
Continue playing after losing 17 games in a row, especially when you realize how long it takes to play Wingspan. Wingspan is a 70-minute game no matter how you slice it. It's an hour and a half sometimes.
We've played it in like 35, 40 minutes.
So have I,
we
depending.
take our turns. We think about what we're going to do on the other person's turn.
Yeah, but sometimes that's hard to do because there's actions that the other person is doing right up until the end of their turn. Anyway, that's one of the good games that we should check out if you're interested in playing board games. I'm going to now list. These are a list from NBC of the top 10 board games right now during the pandemic, in their opinion. Because you can go online and check out top 10 games, and they're different in every single pod. But these I find to be pretty consistent across the board, except for a couple. So, Ticket to Ride.
Classic.
The best.
Also, there's so many different kinds you can play. We own the regular Ticket to Ride, the North America. We own Great Lakes, Rails and Sails, Germany.
Europe.
The expansion for Europe, the 1912 expansion.
Yeah.
We have New York.
Yeah.
Do you have Switzerland and India?
We
No.
don't, but I have them online.
I would
through
like to get
Steam.
India. But the thing is, one thing I will add about the Ticket to Ride series is once you get to know the first one, the original, which is North America, basically each new Ticket to Ride game has a new feature or new dynamic to the game that it'll add, in Germany, there's meeples, which are these little
Tiny wooden people.
that are actually involved in a lot of different games. It's just a little token that they call meeples, and it's
In
a
Germany,
European
yeah,
thing.
they're a German game. Like lots of German games have meeples in them. So this was like kind of like
An homage.
Yeah, like a shedding a light to that. It was really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. They always have one element that's different about each game, which makes it so exciting and so new and so fun and so much fun. And we really enjoy playing Ticket to Ride. Yes.
Yes, I love Ticket to Ride. And I like the fact that, like you were saying, each game is a little bit different. And it's good to play with, I don't know, I don't think you can play with two people. Or yes, you can.
We play with two people all the time.
We play all the time.
The rules are a bit different when you play with 2 people and 3 people. And it's just as fun to play with 5 people. Sarah's making funny faces.
Yeah, she's making those funny faces. I can tell you why. It's because she gets extremely stressed out when there is.
So someone's blocking her route.
It's because the roads get like actually clustered. Like there is nowhere to go. Like it's just.
But can I say that is actually one of the aspects of the game that I love. Because I love the pressure and I love the feeling of the stress of, am I going to finish my route? Am I going to get that before somebody else does? And when you do, it's quite a rewarding experience. And when you don't, it's like,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that I can tell you with certainty that the entire time I'm playing Ticket to Ride, I'm low-key stressed the entire time through. Like, I'm like, am I going to finish these quests? Because Dylan and I also play at a very high level. Like, we usually score over 100 points in every single game of Ticket to Ride we play.
Yeah,
like,
even some of the other ones were 200, 300
Yeah,
points.
like it's a bit excessive. But it's very rewarding at the end. It's like the most like weight off your shoulders when you finish what you've been working towards the entire time. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
And I feel like during a pandemic, especially someone like me, I have been working from home and I have not been leaving my house at all, really. Groceries delivered to my door, I'm totally at home. So having little times in the day when you can play a game that has goals that you need to reach, and when you reach them, how satisfied you can feel, I feel like that was a very positive experience to have within being stuck at home in quarantine.
I agree with you, and I think I like Ticket to Ride because, again, it's got a beginning and an end that I can see. It's not too unattainable, whereas some of the games I find so complicated now that it's the end goal is just almost unattainable, and I get frustrated with that, but that's because I have a very simple mind. Anyway, it's time for us to take our first little break, and when we get back, we'll continue with our top 10 list and maybe introduce you to another couple of games that you hadn't even considered before. You're listening to Fresh Waves, and we'll be right back, so stay tuned. Hi, this is Bren Masson, host of Fresh Waves. Fresh Waves is a talk show and podcast that talks about fresh, new ideas. Actually, sometimes we talk about really old, ancient ideas too that are becoming fresh once more. You can hear us on Whistle FM Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. or go to our website, Freshwaves.ca, to hear the podcasts. We also love to hear your stories and your suggestions, so drop us a line at bren@freshwaves.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Fresh Waves, it really is fresh. We're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and today we are in the studio, our home studio, with our bubble friends. Actually, one is related to me and one is the partner of my daughter, so we are in the same bubble.
Okay. We'll be your bubble friends. It's fine.
We are bubble friends. So we are bubble friends, and we are having a conversation about board games because during the pandemic, board games have become really important and a great source of entertainment for many families and many couples and many people just stuck together for whatever reason and riding out this pandemic. So I'm really happy to have you two on board because earlier today when I sent you the list of the top 10 that I found, and like I said, this is you'll find a whole bunch of different interpretations of what the top 10 board games are right now, but this one from NBC, I found it to contain most of the common games that everybody else is saying are in their top 10. And when I sent it to you, Sarah, out of the 10, you already owned 7 of these games before the pandemic even started, and now 2 of them you've requested as Christmas gifts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So heads up, Dylan, you're getting more games.
Oh, he knows.
Sweet. Yeah. I'm
Anyway,
excited.
so we just talked about Ticket to Ride, which was a really cool game on the list and one that we all agree that it's a great game. Family game, 2-people game. It's just a great game. And it comes in all kinds of different varieties. Do start, I would say, though, if you are new to games, don't go into Ticket to Ride Europe as your first purchase. You start with the basic game.
North America.
And then add on to anything after that. Because once you understand the basics of the game and you can play it, well, then you want to go on to the other games.
Correct.
Now, the next one, I've never heard of this. Carcassonne?
Carcassonne.
Yeah,
that's the game I got that game. It's a great 2-player game. I purchased it actually for my cousin who just had a baby with his wife, and I gave that game to them because it's a great 2-player game. We actually haven't played it at all during the pandemic so far, Dylan and I, but we've owned it for many a year, and we love playing it.
Mm-hmm. Carcassonne.
Yeah, we have a song for it.
Yeah,
we made its own song. Yes.
Yeah.
It's that good that you made your own song about the game.
I just get bored and make songs about whatever I'm doing at the time. So
it's it's an interesting game because there's not a lot of strategy to it. There kind of is, but you're basically like it's these tiles, and each tile has a different shape on it, and it can either be a grassy shape, it can be a road, or it can be part of a city shape. And basically, you're trying to complete these 3 things. So you're completing monasteries, you're completing roads, and you're completing cities. And so you're both playing, or however amount of people are playing, you're playing on the same board. So you're taking tiles that are contributing to this one communal board. And so just say you had a city tile. So what you'll have a corner of the city on the piece of the tile. So you're going to want to start connecting other tiles to make the outline of the city end up completing a complete circle. And so once you do that, you also have meeples, and meeples kind of go on to claim those spaces. So if Dylan and I were fighting for a city and we're both trying to build the edge of the city to complete, then we would both be putting meeples onto that city each tile we play to try and have the most meeples. The person with the most meeples that finishes each piece, so like a city or a road or the monastery, then gets the points for that completion.
So you can kind of steal somebody's city that they've been building, which really ticks them off. So that's really fun.
By putting more of your meeples on it.
And these are not meatballs, they're meatballs.
No, yeah, just to clarify, not meatballs, but tiny little German people.
Yes.
Okay.
Meeple is a tiny little colored wooden people.
Which is also part of the song that we sing about.
All right.
Yes.
So the next game on the list is 7 Wonders.
Haven't played it. We looked at it actually around last Christmas. We were at the mall together in the board game store, as we do, and we used to frequent that store quite a bit. And they recommended it to us.
Yeah, I believe they did.
And it was kind of on our short list of things we were going to get, but because of the pandemic, we didn't end up going. We don't go to the mall anymore, obviously. So we have not purchased it yet, but I've heard good things.
Yes, I've heard good things as well. And, of course, next on the list is Catan. And now,
classic.
I know Catan as someone who's over 50. I know Catan as a university game. Like, the university students just seem to love Catan.
Yes, it was definitely trending in the university towns for sure. That's where I picked it up. Originally, it was called The Settlers of Catan, but it's, I guess, in its many editions, it's now been changed just to Catan. I picked it up probably in 2012. That's when I started playing it. It was one of the first board games that I purchased for myself, not including ones that we had been playing as a family. So not including like the Game of Things or Taboo or those classics. This was kind of the first board game that I had learned on my own and that I just really loved. And every single person I know loves Catan. Everyone. It's such a good game.
Would you consider it a family game?
I'm not sure if it's for kids. I would say that if you're around like preteens, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I think would be okay. Anything younger, maybe not. But I think if you have like a preteen family, I think it'd be great. Or teenagers, great. We absolutely love it. You have to play with 3 people. That's the only thing. So Dylan and I haven't been able to play it quite often because of the pandemic. But before that, we were playing it. It's one of my most used board games. We absolutely love Catan.
Yep. Yeah, we
Okay.
play it with
So
my
that's-
dad. We play it with our friend
Yeah.
Azul all the time.
Midori, all of our good friends are all amazing at Catan. We all just love it. It's a
Yeah.
great trading game. Lots of communication throughout the game. It's
Lots
just
of social interactions.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's just like it's such a fun, amazing game. It's so well rounded in strategy, in communication, in sharing, in giving and taking. It's just there's so many variables, and every single time you play it, it's going to be a different game.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on their list is Pandemic. We've already discussed Pandemic, and it is a cooperative game, which puts it, I think, in a whole different category than the other games that we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, so it's quite tricky. It's a really fun game. I like it a lot. It takes a lot of cooperation. So this is a game where Dylan and I have argued before because you're not only cooperating like, oh, I'll trade you this for this. It's not really like that. What you're doing is every single person's turn, everyone has to agree on what they're going to do.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so basically, you get to be a different character. There's these set card characters that get dealt out randomly, and that's the character you are for the game. And so each character has a different skill set. So, for example, if you're the researcher, you get to build research centers without having to do what other people would have to do to build a research center.
And share information. freely,
Yes,
yeah.
and share information. And if you're a medic, you get to help cure the disease easier than other people. So
Okay.
basically what you're doing in the game is you're playing against the board. So the board has outbreak cards that are randomly shuffled in, and they have epidemic cards that are randomly shuffled in. So you have to, kind of. They're epidemic cards, not outbreaks. Outbreaks happen when an epidemic kind of bubbles over, so that there's cities that have too many of the disease cubes on it, and then an outbreak occurs, which then you have to kind of put its own little scenario on the board for what happens when an outbreak occurs. But basically, I'm really digressing here. Basically, you're going around the board and you're trying to keep the levels of the outbreak low enough so that you're not going to make more outbreaks in time to cure the 6 different diseases that are plaguing the earth. 5.
Four.
4?
Yes.
Red, blue, yellow, black. Yes, 4 different diseases that are
I
plaguing
would
the
just
world.
see personally that this is probably something I wouldn't want to play during a pandemic, just because it would maybe foreshadow doom and gloom. That
Yeah, like
It's a little dreary. Yeah,
we
we
also-
don't really play it right now.
we haven't played it during the pandemic because we also lose at it all the time. Like, it's a really hard game to beat, especially with just 2 people.
and then the pandemic is winning, and
Right.
that's not a nice place.
Yeah,
to
no,
be
the
right
world
now.
the
No.
world gets like completely screwed. Like
Yeah.
you're everything just like goes
We're-
like falls apart.
We're experiencing that already in real life right now.
Yes.
So, I mean, a board game version is not that appealing at this point right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we did play it a lot beforehand, like quite a bit. It was one of our top 10 games we would play.
When no one imagined that a pandemic was actually
Exactly.
a real thing. Okay, so next on the list is Dominion.
Okay, funny
Oh,
story
yes.
about Dominion. I bought Dominion, I think in 2012. Again, it was one of the same boards that I had purchased when I purchased Catan, and at the time, my group of friends really wanted to play Dominion, so I said, okay, I'll buy it. I want to kind of start working on my board game collection, anyways, and we didn't really end up playing it, and I never ended up playing it throughout the last decade. People didn't really want to play it with me. There was always another game that people wanted to play. And so Dylan and I picked it up during the pandemic. We were like, hey, we've literally never played this game. Might as well try and see what it does because we're bored, and, you know, we kind of wanted to go through some of the games that don't normally get played in my collection. So we started playing it, and we've been absolutely loving it.
Can't put it down.
We play it nonstop.
Really? Well, what do
We
you
love
like
it.
about it, Dylan?
Well, what I love about it is I'm really big on like games that you like gather resources then reinvest, right? Like money games like that, like Monopoly. Basically, this is a deck building game. And so how that works is everybody kind of starts off with a starting set of cards, which is 10, and you get 7 currency cards in that 10, and you get 5 cards in your hand, and so you'll have a certain amount of currency you can spend in that turn to buy new cards. And so you're constantly, building your resources and then trying to buy new cards to build your deck into a more powerful one. And
at the same time, there's 3 different categories of victory point cards. There's one that's worth 1 that's worth 3 victory points, and one that's worth 6 victory points. So while you're starting to get more and more money and more resources, you can start buying those cards as well on your turn. At the end of the game, you go through your deck that you've built yourself, and the person with the most victory points wins.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I really like these the deck building kind of thing is a lot of fun for me. I enjoy that.
I don't understand what you mean by deck building. So just for listeners who are not avid board game players, what is deck building?
I was actually going to speak to that because deck building to me sounds like a very looming kind of thing, but it's actually not that. It's not that complicated. Basically, you start with 10 cards, and 7 of them are currency. They're coppers. And the other 3 are 1-pointer victory points. So basically, you shuffle those 10 cards, and you pick up 5 cards. To start your turn, you have 5 cards in your hand. Those 5 cards are just going to be whatever was shuffled from your own little deck. Okay? So then if you picked up 5 cards, and there are 3 coppers and 2 victory points in your hand, then you have 3 coppers to buy something on the table that's worth 3 in value. And I just want to touch on the fact that in Dominion, there are so many ways you can play the game because you can have different cards available for each game. So you're not using all the cards from the box for every single game. You're using I don't know, 13 or something cards, like stacks of cards from the game. So with those 3 that you had, the 3 coins you had, you get to pick up something that's worth 3 or less. So you pick that up and put it in your discard pile. All the 5 cards that you had in your hand go into the discard pile, and then you play your next turn. And so eventually, you're going to be shuffling the discard pile to start a new pickup pile. So you're going to start being able to use the cards you're purchasing and putting in your discard pile, and then gaining more cards and more cards and more.
Essentially building a deck.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you're starting off with nothing, and then you're buying cards and then
as
putting them in.
As opposed to a Wingspan, which is more of an engineering game.
Mm.
They call it an engineering kind of a game.
Yeah, I mean, in Wingspan, you're honestly, it's kind of similar, just in the fact that you're really trying to get to a place where you're getting more resources that you need so you can play more cards. It's kind of like that in the same way in a deck building game. So
I can see the similarities.
Yeah, so you're trying to get yourself to a point where you have accumulated more cards that are going to then get you better stuff, right?
Okay.
So, and then you're going to get more and more better stuff. That's your English quote of the day. And then you're going to end up being able to purchase these kind of big money tokens, which are like the 6-point victory point card that goes in your hand,
right,
or gold that's worth 6 points, or, whatever.
All right, next on the list is Azul. Now, I know you haven't played that because it's now on your Christmas list.
Ooh.
I have not, but I just watched a YouTube tutorial on it, and it looks really cool. You're basically collecting tile tokens that that you have to put in pairs or triplets or quadruplets, all the same pattern, on your board in order for it to count towards this like final wall tile pattern.
Beauty.
It's really cool. It's actually, it looks really interesting. And
It does.
it looks like a really cool game to play with 2 people, which I think is something we're definitely looking at right now.
Okay. The next one is The Mind. Now, The Mind I checked out, and it's basically a card game. And it looks, at first glance, to be one of those games that could easily be transformed into a university drinking game. So if it hasn't caught on yet, I imagine that it will relatively soon. It's a card game. I mean, we've talked about the classics, and one thing that we haven't really touched on yet is basic card games. So this just seems to be a card game that could have been played in a number of different ways without a game structure around it, and someone's just put it in a box and given it a couple of more details in order to make it something that you play in a box. But it's an interesting game and something that I would check out. And next on the list is Wingspan, which we've talked about ad nauseum.
You should go buy it. Whoever's listening to this right now, purchase it. Best game ever. We love birds. Every single card is so beautifully constructed. The artwork is incredible. Everything is wonderful. And they have real true facts about each bird that are real life birds from the earth, and they show you where they live, and they tell you cool facts about it. Get the European expansion.
Fair warning, if you're going to buy this game, also purchase yourself some really good binoculars and a good digital SLR camera with an expensive lens, because you're going to become a bird watcher after this. You're going to be highly interested in birds.
That is what happened to me. And we purchased the game.
It's so cool.
I played it the first time, and I can honestly say, first go around, I did not like it. Too complicated. I wasn't interested. Don't teach me a new game at 10 o'clock at night. I just don't have the brain for it anymore. Okay,
10 o'clock at night.
It was 9:30. It's still too late. Anyway, the second time I played it, I liked it a little bit more. And third, fourth time in, it was fantastic. And I've never looked back. So thank you, Sarah. I know you've got your hand up.
And I will say that if you're going to start trying to learn new board games, never have an opinion off of the first time you play it, because it's always going to be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit just out of grasp on like actually what's going on. So I always recommend playing it one time through and just blindly accepting the rules and going through, and then playing it a second time and really trying to kind of embody it. Go ahead, Dylan.
I'm just going to come out and say it. It sucks. The first time sucks, and pretty much always sucks. But
in every game, really. Any good game?
Yeah. Once you get to know what's happening and have some understanding of what's going on, it starts to become fun, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I agree. And one of the things I like about Wingspan is I have learned a ton of interesting things about birds. I've learned what they eat, where they live, habits that they have and behaviors.
Yeah.
I did end up going birding with a bird watching friend of mine. So I've seen her do it many times before. But when we went to get this game back in March, when the pandemic had just gotten serious, it was almost unattainable. When we went on Amazon, there was one left, and we snagged it. Sarah said, grab it right away. And the next day there were none. Yeah. And this game is in top demand even now. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. The value of the game, I've never seen pieces that are so well designed.
Yeah, the artwork is great.
Everything about it is fantastic.
And I will say that this is kind of following a similar pattern that Catan had back in 2010, 2011, 2012, you could not purchase it. If you found it in a book, in like a store somewhere, you bought it because it was just completely sold out all the time. Right. And I want to say it's comparable to that.
I want to say for sure that this is not a show that is an infomercial in any way. We are sharing our personal thoughts and feelings about games. We're not sponsored by any game company.
Although if a game company is listening right now, please sponsor me and give me your free board games.
But you know, it's funny because what happens with these games is you've invited them into your home, you're playing them in your home, and they become dear and true to you and how you play them and everything. And already in Wingspan, we already call it birds instead of Wingspan, and we've already come across several instances where house rules are starting to form in the game, where I've said, oh no, that's not how you play it. I've heard that you play it like this, and then we've looked it up in the rules and found out that, oh no, that's really not, this is a house rule.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, I think, with a really good game is that house rules evolve. You find ways that are better to play, easier to play, more to your liking and style. Yeah. Anyway, the last one on the list.
I just wanted to say one more thing about Wingspan. Just for all the feminist listeners out there, it is female designed, so that's a really good point.
Yes, the artists and the developer,
all of them, the entire team.
Yep. The entire it's all women. So I just thought I'd add
having
that.
said that, every guy I know who's played it loves it. So
just because females made it doesn't mean that
girls rule.
It's just for women.
It's
exciting. It's exciting and empowering that an entirely female team constructed the game. It's super cool.
And Monopoly was invented by a woman as well. Just saying.
I did not know that.
Okay, next on their top 10 and the last game on the top 10 is Codenames. Now, I must say, Codenames is also a game that you do not start playing at 10 o'clock at night if you're over the age of 50. But it is completely different from all of the games that are on this list. It's card-based. It's not so strategic as it is a heavy thinking game. It really is a thinking game. You're not trying to out-strategize your opponent. You're trying to think of clues that will help your team member guess which cards belong to you and which belong to the other team. And you want to avoid the one that is the deadly one that when guessed will lose you the game.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a battleship.
Yeah.
It's like a battleship grid, but they're all cards. It's a 5x5 grid on the table, and it's all different cards that have one word. And so there are going to be 2 teams, and there is the spy master of each team will sit with the other spy master of the other team, and they'll look at a card that shows a pattern of red and blue squares associated to the grid on the table. The red team has to get their red teammates to guess the words that are lit up all with their pattern, while the blue team does the same for the blue colors. And there's one black card that if any team guesses it, they're immediately out. So this game, you're not going to be able to play with 2 people. But I will say that in the pandemic, they have an online version, and I've been playing it online with over Zoom with some friends, and then we play it online, and it's a great game still. It's almost the exact same. So basically, you each take turns, the spy masters take turns giving a 1-word clue and then a number. So for example, if 3 of my cards were associated with animals, I could potentially say like mammal for 3. And then the teammates of my color will try and think, okay, which ones on the board does she think are mammals or associated with mammals? And there's 3 of them.
Right.
But yeah, so it's been really interesting being able to play it online as well as in person because Dylan and I have just been the 2 of us.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we have to wrap things up because, as usual, this show just ends before it even begins, as far as I'm concerned. This is a conversation that we could literally have for another 2 hours. So what I think we'll do is we'll close off this one with some tips for people on choosing the right game. And I think one of the things that we've already discussed is the fact that we have to know the people who are going to play. Really take a look at who your family members are. And the sensitive ones, be careful of the one that doesn't want to get left out. So don't play a game that might leave a person out. One of the cool things you can do now is watch the video overview of the game. So you can go onto YouTube or one of these channels and actually see people playing the game and see how it's played. You can read the reviews. And if people are saying, really liked it, but 5 people's too many, or really liked it, but didn't like the attack on one individual, blah, blah, blah.
Whatever aspect.
And then you judge accordingly whether that seems to be a game that you'd like to play, no matter how many people have told you that it's the best game they've ever played in their entire lives. Download the rules before you purchase the game so you can get a little bit of an overview about what you think the game is about. Board Game Geeks, they have a database with more than 115,000 tabletop games, which is what they call board games.
Wow.
And they have
That's crazy.
Listen to this, 2 million registered viewers who rate and review the game.
That's so cool.
So you go there, and apparently I've heard that it's quite overwhelming. But if you are looking for something in particular, before you get to a place that has 115,000 board games, then you have a better chance. Don't just go there and browse because you'll never be able to find anything. You won't be able to make up your mind.
Come with some
But
titles.
in talking about browsing, should we go around the table and say our 3 games we would recommend you purchase
Sure.
that we like? Okay, so my 3 that I think that everybody listening might enjoy, that I'm really enjoying right now, and I'm not saying they're my top 3 games ever, just right now I'm really enjoying them. I would say my 3 are Citadels, which we haven't talked about today. But look
we
it
will
up.
next time.
It's a
We'll
really
do
good
a part
game.
2. In part 2,
Yep.
we'll talk about
So
Citadels.
Citadels. Are you going to put Dominion on yours? Okay, so I'll say Citadels. I'll say Catan. What do you think yours 3 would be? Can you think of your 3 right now while I think of my last one?
Probably Dominion would be number 1. Number 2 would be Ticket to Ride North America.
Okay.
And maybe, to be honest, just in the spirit of Halloween that just passed, The Haunting at Hill House. That's a really fun
The Haunting
game.
of the House on the Hill.
It's The Haunting at Hill House, I think.
That's a TV show.
Oh,
The
okay.
Haunting of the House on the Hill.
All right. Well, anyway, it's
a good game.
That game is really cool. It's interesting. It's somewhat cooperative. One person ends up being the enemy for everyone else at the table. So that's a really fun point.
My 3rd one would be Takenoko. which we play quite often.
Is that the one with the panda bear?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we'll get into that one on part 2 because we are literally out of time today. So I must say, part 2 is a thing. We're going to have to do a part 2 of this show because we've got so many more games to share with our listeners. If you have a favorite game, drop us a line at Bren at Freshwaves.ca. Let us know what your favorite game is, or you can go onto Facebook at Freshwaves with Bren Masson, and you can leave us a note there. We'd always love to hear your thoughts and opinions, and we love having you listen to Fresh Waves. Have a great day, everyone.